Good morning. The Committee on General Government Operations, Appropriation, and Housing convenes this budget hearing. This budget hearing notice were given to the media on Tuesday, June 11th, June 18th, and for the record, today is Friday, June 21st. The budget hearing is called to order. It is now 9 o'clock. The committee will hear budget hearing on the Guam Fire Department. The committee will hear and accept those testimonies, both oral and written. My colleagues, I know I just came from a meeting. They're all heading this way, so I expect them to start flowing in, and as soon as they get here, then I'll recognize them. The conduct of this budget hearing shall be as follows. Those testifying will be recognized in the order of sign up on the sign-in sheet, and we will start with the chief, and then the chief will designate whoever needs to speak. Written testimony may be read. Written testimony should be submitted to the committee. Please provide our legislative staff with your written testimony, which you already have. Testimony be confined to the substance. We're all talking about your budget, your shortfalls, whatever it may be. Persons will be allowed to present oral testimony. My script has only once, but you can testify as much as you need to, okay? And once you're done, you may be asked to remain in the room for questions or for additional testimony as may be desired. Proper form and decorum shall be practiced by all present in the public hearing room for the proceedings. Individuals who fail to maintain proper form and decorum may be restricted from providing oral testimony and or may be asked to leave or be escorted, removed from the room. I'm quite comfortable with the folks that are here today. I don't believe we'll have to escort anybody out. When you speak, please make sure that the microphone is on and that you speak into the microphone. State your name for the record. We will now begin to hear testimony on the fiscal year 2020 budget of the Guam Fire Department, and we will begin with you, Chief. Sir.
Thank you, Senator. Buenas noches, Chairman San Agustin and members of the Committee of General Government Operations, Appropriations, and Housing. Thank you for the opportunity to present the Guam Fire Department's fiscal year 2020 proposed budget. As the newly confirmed Fire Chief for the Guam Fire Department, I want to first thank each of you for your vote of confidence regarding my confirmation, and even more importantly, for your continued support of the professional women and men that make up the Guam Fire Department. Before presenting to you GFD's fiscal year 2020 request, I would like to lay out the landscape for my testimony through an overview of direction, challenges, highlights, and accomplishments that should bring you an understanding of the professional services that the Guam Fire Department, its administrative support staff, and the emergency medical dispatchers provide to our island community. My guidance remains to meet our mission mandates, ensure that our staff is led, trained, equipped, and paid by increasing efficiency and capabilities while decreasing expenditures, and finally, to seek revenue enhancement through cost recovery and eligible grants. At the beginning of my appointment, I read through the Transition Committee's report to the Governor, and I've worked with my staff to address those areas in the report that could be rectified without difficulty, and then discuss the points of the report that required either analysis or feasibility review. The mission of the Guam Fire Department is to mitigate threats of life, property, and environment through education, prevention, and effective response to fire, medical, and environmental emergencies. The Guam Fire Department is mandated to provide the overall fire protection, fire prevention, fire suppression and extinguishment, and the protection of life and property connected therewith, requiring a comprehensive administration of an emergency medical services program to include a wildland firefighting capability for the territory of Guam. The Guam Fire Department provides for and administers an extensive program for fire prevention inspections, public fire safety education and training, international fire code enforcement, fire investigations, review of plans for new and existing building construction. Additionally, GFD operates and manages an enhanced emergency 911 communication system and a wide land and open water search and rescue program. With recent Homeland Security and War on Terrorism initiatives, the Guam Fire Department provides a comprehensive hazardous materials response team, an advanced life support team, as well as a rapid intervention team. We accomplish this mission by promoting safety and maintaining a well-equipped, highly trained and motivated force of professional firefighters, EMTs, rescue personnel, and emergency medical dispatchers, and promoting fire prevention and other public safety education programs. The Guam Fire Department goals and objectives are as follows: maintain timely, effective, and quality medical response to all types of calls for assistance by the island community, which will be accomplished by maintaining the mandates requiring all firefighters to be emergency medical technicians. Continue implementing training so that all firefighters acquire National Registry Emergency Medical Technician training and Fire Service Pro Board certification as first responders to any type of emergencies. Continue to train firefighters who are EMT advanced so they maintain their certification levels, as well as identify the next iteration of EMT advanced personnel to stay ahead of the anticipated retirement of ALS personnel. Explore the feasibility of establishing a paramedic program that would afford those who wish to track within this career path the opportunity to enhance their knowledge and skills with this certification, thereby augmenting our service capability to the community. Maintain emergency medical dispatch APCO certification for the 911 personnel. Ensure compliance with peace officer standards training requirements by phasing in the newly adopted firefighter physical abilities test in an effort to educate as well as promote a meaningful physical fitness and wellness program to all firefighters. Create a culture of fitness and wellness throughout the ranks while continuing to develop best practices in order to minimize injury and prolong one's overall health. Continue our public safety education and life safety programs aimed at our youth within the community that brings awareness and education by assisting in fire and medical emergencies. Grow the self-inspection program for businesses in the community to meet the demands of fire code inspections. Continue our smoke detector, public safety education and life safety programs, and implement a confidence testing program for fire protection systems. Conduct a multi-agency response exercise with both local and federal partners to enhance relationships within our emergency response community, as well as to enhance our overall ability to respond to any contingency. Continue to train and equip the Emergency Hazardous Materials Response Team and work closely with the Environmental Protection Agency and Homeland Security to prepare against any type of hazardous situation that may become a threat to the island and its community. Purchase more emergency response vehicles and equipment to replace the aging fleet. Build 2 additional fire stations in strategic locations in order to expand the department's presence in the community and improve response time. Replace our legacy E911 system with the next generation 911 system and put the most modern technology and equipment in the hands of our emergency medical dispatchers so they can provide more effective calls and dispatching services to the community. This system will also include a management information system that will monitor all types of suppression, EMS rescue, fire prevention, and investigation responses, and will provide valuable statistics. Increase community outreach programs such as child care seat inspections, station tours, and public education events in an effort to foster stronger community relations. Acquire a maintenance facility for the Guam Fire Department's fleet maintenance and repair section. Review the present ambulance billing program and the GFD fees schedule to be in line with current insurance reimbursable rates in order to better recover our ever-increasing operational cost. Continue to pursue financial avenues or partnerships to build a GFD headquarters, GFD training facility, and the next generation 911 center. These goals and objectives are met with perennial challenges that include an attrition rate of up to 17 firefighters a year, ongoing military training and extended deployments, and medical profiles. These absences continuously challenge our ability to meet NFPA and OSHA standards, specifically the 2-in, 2-out rule. A vast majority of our attrition is due to retirement, leaving gaps in institutional knowledge and experience within the first line and middle management supervisory positions for various units in the Guam Fire Department. Because of our attrition rates, we are challenged to reduce the need for overtime expenditures while still being able to provide the necessary service to save lives, protect property at the level of service the community has come to expect and deserves. Given these challenges, we pride ourselves in the accomplishments we are still able to achieve through the professionalism and high level of dedication and oftentimes selfless service of our members. Less than a year ago, we graduated 45 recruits, a much-needed addition to our ranks. However, despite their addition, we had 17 of our personnel retire before these recruits made it into their respective assignments, and we are tracking an additional 12 by the end of this year. But despite the attrition rates we are experiencing and the challenges it pose, we continue to ensure that we achieve the mission of our department. We have experienced some challenges with adequately supplying our responders with the latest in hazmat response equipment, extrication tools, and self-contained breathing apparatus. However, even with our challenges, we continue to meet the needs of our community. It has been through agency partnerships that we've been able to slowly make purchases by way of cooperative grants. What we are most proud of is the community partnerships and volunteerism of the Guam Fire Department members that has resulted in the renovation, repairs, and painting of various fire stations around the island. But given the age of most of our firehouses, even those efforts are at times not enough to fend off the effects of the exposures of the environment. On top of these efforts, our Guam Fire Department personnel still make time to get involved in efforts with varying special needs and community outreach programs. This selfless service demonstrated by a large majority of our department is to be lauded. I'd like to highlight the acquisition of the Next Generation 911 system already in progress, and we remain very hopeful that we will be able to identify a vendor for this system in the very near future. We are working with our response partners over at GIPA to ensure grant funding of the purchase and replacement of our hazmat response equipment. We've also recently secured over $18,000 in grant funding from the Office of Highway Safety that will go towards the purchase of the hydraulic extrication tool, also known as the Jaws of Life. We recently purchased through GSA a brand used ambulance that came available through federal surplus at a reasonable cost that we were able to immediately put into service. We are still working with our vendor to purchase 2 new ambulances to replace our high mileage and aging fleet. We are also finalizing the purchase of 2 much needed tankers that will greatly improve our firefighting capabilities, most especially in those areas that are plagued with low water pressure or are remotely located. The discussion of a new Tumuni Fire Station to replace our current flagship station is ongoing, and we are working with our partners at GITA to see this effort through. I am also pleased to share that as of yesterday, an even more promising commitment was made by the Director of GURA regarding the building of the new Sinahanya Fire Station. I want to thank the administration and my fellow government agencies that are aiding in the realization of these visions. We have also been in productive and meaningful discussion regarding the renovation and the building at our Agate Rescue Base, is currently located, in an effort to enhance response, secure assets, and improve the security and living conditions for our personnel assigned there. The Guam Fire Department continues to work with GITA and its consultant, as well as the Department of Agriculture's Fisheries Division, to build an east side boat ramp at Talifofo Bay, a much-needed access point for the purpose of water rescue at this exposure. We continue to capitalize on funding appropriations in order to purchase new fire apparatus and tenders so we can replace an aging fleet that are fast approaching their recommended service life, and avail ourselves of the latest equipment and technology to aid in combating fires in any situation. We continue to aggressively pursue funding appropriations or programs to be able to secure the purchase of a much-needed high-rise apparatus that would be able to provide immediate access to multi-story buildings, most especially in our hotel district. We continue to analyze the feasibility of establishing a non-firefighter, single-purpose EMT position that would staff our ambulances during our defined peak call hours and respond to medical calls, which would then revert back to our on-duty firefighters at the stations during the low peak hours. This would negate the need to have those EMTs stay at the fire station overnight or generate overtime. This would allow our bureau chiefs to properly and adequately staff our engine companies, rescue crews, and hazmat teams. We look to purchase the necessary equipment in order to roll out the newly adopted firefighter physical abilities test as a measure for the bylaw post-annual physical fitness requirements. Along with our future projects, we are working closely with the Office of Senator Clint Rigel to update our fees and fines schedule for our fire prevention, EMS, and fire suppression services, primarily to provide for continuing enforcement, suppression, and medical capabilities, and to again recover the ever-growing operational costs for these services. This could translate into a decreased reliance on the general fund. Appropriate for Guam, The Guam Fire Department is a full-time paid service, and our organizational structure consists of the Office of the Fire Chief, Administrative and Support Services Bureau, EMS Rescue Operations Bureau, Fire Suppression Bureau, Training Bureau, and the Fire Prevention Bureau, and our E911 Communications Bureau. During my testimony, I will go over the functions and objectives of each bureau as I explain the detail of this budget request. However, up front, the following is an executive summary of the Guam Fire Department's FY 2020 budget request.
Chief,
Sir.
I'd like to recognize my colleagues, like I advised you earlier. We all came from a meeting. I think some are still following. We have to my immediate left, which is the oversight chair of the fire department,
Yes.
Senator Clinton Rigel.
Good morning, Senator.
To his left is Senator Regine Besculi.
Good morning.
And then we have Senator Therese Terlai.
Good morning.
To my immediate right, I have Senator Luis Muña,
Good morning, Senator.
then Senator Telo Taitigui, and Senator Will Castro.
Good morning, Senators.
Okay, so Chief, you may continue.
I'll get it back, sir.
Thank you, sir.
The Guam Fire Department is requesting the total amount of $32,753,256 for fiscal year 2020. This amount reflects an increase of $521,682 from its FY 2019 appropriations from all funding sources. The table details the amount being requested from each funding source and reflects the amount of increase, decrease when compared to the 2019 authorization level. From the General Fund, Personnel Services. GFD's FY 2020 proposed budget for the General Fund is increased from the authorized funding from FY 2019. As reflected on the budget digest and proposed staffing patterns, personnel services are increased by $588,336. Inclusive of this is the accounting for the full re-implementation of salary increments. Additionally, while we brought on additional personnel in FY 18 and 19, we are still experiencing a high attrition rate due to personnel retirement and/or resignations, resulting in a steady increase of overtime expenditures due to the shortage. Operations. The Guam Fire Department's annual requirement for travel, contractual services, office space rental, drug testing, and miscellaneous object classes, as well as utilities, largely remains the same. However, as shown in the summary budget digest, the burden of our contractual services and miscellaneous object classes will be funded by appropriations made from the Tourist Attraction Fund. The trade-off now is utilities will be funded by the General Fund. E911 surcharge. GFD's proposed budget for this funding source includes funding to adequately address personnel services, as well as operations and utility requirements to effectively and efficiently operate the 911 center. Inclusive in our budget request is to fund the estimated annual recurring cost in our acquisition of the new state-of-the-art next-generation 911 system, which is currently in progress. The next-generation system will replace our legacy system that is antiquated and becoming increasingly challenging to maintain. This acquisition will negate the need to invest in our current system, resulting in a savings of $139,475 in equipment and decrease the A significant note is through a proper assessment of average utility costs, we were able to decrease our utility expenditures by $79,090 for the next FY. The Flame Fund, funding from this source will be requested and will address the Guam Fire Department's annual requirements for equipment and capital outlay categories. GFD is in a constant need to procure medical, firefighting and rescue equipment that are either damaged due to wear and tear or have exceeded its recommended service life. Furthermore, adequate funding for capital outlay will allow GFD to continue its yearly procurement of ambulances, rescue jet skis, a critically needed tanker truck, and life-saving Jaws of Life extrication equipment. The Tourist Attraction Fund, as mentioned earlier, contractual services in large part will be funded by the TAF. It is also imperative that funding be provided for GFD to address requirements for medical, firefighting and rescue supplies, as well as to cover the cost for the refueling of our fleet of emergency vehicles and other critically needed supplies to sustain operations, which equates to the majority of the $827,074 requested for this special fund. The Office of the Fire Chief. The Office of the Fire Chief provides the overall direction and guidance for the administration and operations of programs and services relative to the prevention and suppression of fires, protection of life and property from related hazards, comprehensive delivery of emergency medical services, the enforcement of the International Fire Code, plans of review through inspections, public fire safety education, arson investigation and training, the preventive maintenance and repair of GFD's emergency fleet, land and open water search and rescue activities, and an E911 system that provides more efficient operations and effective call and dispatching services to the community. The major objectives of the Office of the Fire Chief are to enhance the overall efficiency and effectiveness in GFD's service delivery, to reduce fire-related injuries and avert line-of-duty deaths and fire-related fatalities by promoting public awareness, fire safety, fire prevention, and proficiency through training, to instill and enhance professionalism to the highest standard in the discharge of duties by all rank-and-file personnel, to foster communications and relationships with the community we serve, particularly pertaining to fire, traffic accidents, injuries, and other EMS and rescue incidences. A total of $397,932 is being requested for the Office of the Fire Chief for FY 2020, which is $141,088 more than what was authorized for 2019. The increase is attributed to the filling of the Fire Chief position. The Administrative and Support Services Bureau. This bureau is responsible for supporting the Fire and Deputy Chief's Office and all other bureaus through administrative support and logistics services department-wide. It supports activities comprised of all service-related functions such as fiscal and record management, human resources, payroll services, federal programs and planning, research and development, and supply management. The Bureau is responsible for preparing the annual budget in coordination with the other bureaus and is responsible for the administration and management of the department's approved annual budget. Our major objectives are to provide an adequate funding level to operate all the bureaus, to pursue all avenues to increase revenues for fees and services, to source, apply, and administer local and federal grants, and to ensure that the personnel within the Emergency Operations Bureau are provided with the required and most adequate supplies, materials, and equipment to properly and safely fulfill their missions of providing service to the community. The amount of $308,263 is being requested for the Administrative and Support Services Bureau for FY 2020. This reflects a decrease of $97,775 from the authorization level of 2019. Personnel Services. With Personnel Services, the amount of $308,263 of the Bureau's total budget request is to fund salaries and benefits for 5 classified full-time employees, consisting of an ASO, administrative aide, automotive mechanic, and 2 heavy equipment mechanic 2s. We have 9 vacant positions, which consist of a personnel officer, payroll clerk 1, payroll clerk 2, administrative assistant, maintenance specialist, property control officer, and a program coordinator 4, as well as a heavy equipment mechanic 2. These positions have been vacant for some time now and are critically needed to fulfill the mission and the major objectives of this Bureau as well as the department. It is important to note that these vacant positions were currently being underfilled collaterally by uniformed and non-uniformed personnel. Filling these positions will allow GFD to reassign these uniformed personnel as full-time first responders. We are working with the administration to fill these positions with limited term appointments should funding become available. In operations, GFD is requesting the amount of $218,048 of the Bureau's total request to cover GFD's operational costs for FY 2020. As previously mentioned, the funding for contractual services and miscellaneous object classes was moved to the Tourist Attraction Fund, and the detailed requests are as follows. Travel, $20,219. Funding for travel will allow GFD to send personnel off island to attend the following conferences. Fire Rescue International Conference. The conference brings together fire and emergency service leaders from across the United States and around the globe to learn and collaborate together and share best practices and lessons learned. Training covers all areas of emergency services, managing cultural and social changes within the service, ethical leadership, emergency issues, and career development, and much more. The Association of Public Safety Communications Officials, or APCO. conference. The conference focuses on frontline telecommunications, leadership development, communication center management, and demonstrates cutting-edge technology and more. Attending this conference will tremendously assist GFD in acquiring information and training as it prepares for the soon-to-be completed acquisition of its next-generation 911 system, a system that will provide the public better access to 911 whenever the request for emergency assistance occurs. EMS Today Conference. This conference focuses on the future of EMS and new clinical practices. Information gathered and training received from this conference will increase the level of care provided by GFD's EMTs and first responders to citizens in need of medical care and transport. Fire Rescue Medical Conference. As mass casualty events continue to rise, it is essential for fire service EMS leaders to stay abreast of the new resources, practices, and information that will prepare the Guam Fire Department for such a scenario. This conference offers up-to-date practices and information relative to rescue and EMS operations. All personnel attending these conferences or seminars are required to provide after-action reports and, through coordination with our training bureau, conduct training, lectures, and demonstrations on the training and information obtained to all concerned GFD personnel. Office space rental is requested at $177,840. This amount is being requested for the office space leased currently at DNA Building in Hagåtña. The office space is for all GFD bureaus and its employees, including the training center. It is also identified as our backup 911 center. Previously, GFD has conducted thorough research into the possibility of relocating or branching out its headquarters and administrative offices to various fire stations. However, it has been determined that it is not feasible. This geographical separation of administration and support functions would hamper our ability to effectively and efficiently manage personnel and resources. This is due to the following reasons: decentralization of bureaus, space availability is inadequate, disruption in services, overcrowding of personnel, and create inconvenience and uncomfortable working environments for first responders assigned to the fire stations and administrative staff. It is significant to note that between 1993 and 1994, headquarters and administrative staffs were relocated to the various fire stations for cost containment measures. However, within 6 months, GFD had to lease office space to the reasons stated above. Currently, GFD is working with the Guam Economic Development Authority and the Guam Housing and Urban Renewal for the construction of a new Tumuning Fire Station, as well as working with GURA to build and relocate the Sinahaña Fire Station. It is our plan, cost permitting, to incorporate our headquarters into the design of the Tumuning Fire Station, removing the need to lease office space. For drug testing, $6,000. This amount is needed for the department to continue conducting random drug testing for its personnel. And under utilities, $340,000. This amount is requested to address GFD's power, water, and telephone needs for FY 2020 for all of its fire and rescue stations. Under the EMS Rescue Operations Bureau, this bureau is responsible for the administration of the emergency medical services and rescue operations, assisting in the preparation of GFD's annual budget, development of division goals and objectives, conducting periodic quality assurance to assure compliance of department and federal rules and regulations, orders, and directives. The development of programs, plans to facilitate the achievement of Bureau goals and objectives, and conduct training programs to enhance personnel skills, proficiencies, and capabilities of the emergency rescue personnel to effectuate quality delivery of service. The major objectives of the Bureau are to provide for the rapid deployment of EMS and rescue personnel to all emergencies and alarms, ensuring standard response time is met. Maintain departmental professional integrity by performing the highest degree of professionalism. Establishment of achievable performance systems for monitoring and evaluating personnel's effectiveness, and additional advanced life support personnel to continue to maintain consistent high level of patient care. The amount of $8,315,288 is being requested for the EMS Rescue Operations Bureau for FY 2020, which reflects a decrease of $72,976 from the authorization level of 2019. The requested amount will fund for regular salaries, overtime, and benefits for 60 uniform fire positions, The decreases in the funding request for FY 2020 is attributed to the retirement, resignation, and the reduction in regular salaries as a result of recruitment of the 45 firefighter recruits. The Fire Suppression Bureau and Fire Prevention Bureau and the Training Bureau. The Fire Suppression Bureau is responsible for administering programs and services relative to the suppression and extinguishment of all fire incidents on Guam, to contain and mitigate all hazardous materials incidents, assisting in the preparation of the departmental budget, its goals and objectives, conducting reviews of all command and section activities to ensure compliance in consonance with department directives and orders, conducting strategic planning for conformity to established goals and objectives, coordinates with the Training Bureau on training and development, as well as enhancing firefighter capabilities, strategies, jurisdictional, and mutual aid covenants. The major objectives of the Bureau are to ensure adequate firefighting and response capabilities result in meeting response time, provide efficient, effective, and professional firefighting and EMS services, protect life and property, to abate or reduce destruction of property to a minimum and prevent unnecessary loss of life, and to instill professionalism and integrity in the performance of duty. The Fire Prevention Bureau is responsible for the enforcement of fire laws and regulations, the inspections and abatement of existing and potential fire hazards, the development, evaluation, and administration of fire prevention and fire safety programs, the review of building plans for compliance with the International Fire Code requirements, the investigation of fires to determine the origin and cause and recommend corrective measures, the processing of all complaints pertaining to fire, life safety, and hazardous conditions, the review of existing ordinance, rules and regulations, laws, and other related publications, and recommend change when needed. The major objectives of the Fire Prevention Bureau are to create and maintain a fire-safe environment by preventing and/or eliminating the physical, occupational, and environmental hazards that contribute to the occurrence and spread of fire, to promote fire safety awareness throughout the island of Guam, and to provide timely investigation on all referrals from the engine companies and the general public relative to fires and life safety hazards. The Training Bureau is responsible for the initial and recurring training and continuing skills development of all firefighters and officers, coordinates efforts with other units within the department in identifying employee strengths and weaknesses, implements improved methods of instruction, and providing quality training programs that reflect the needs and changes, provides necessary research, evaluation, and recommendations for new products and procedures necessary to maintain a state-of-the-art emergency response organization. The major objectives of the Training Bureau are to maintain an efficient training program by utilizing, where feasible, training opportunities provided by bona fide training organizations and institutions. Increase firefighters' effectiveness in firefighting, EMS, fire prevention, hazardous material, and weapons of mass destruction through continuous training. Establish a partnership within the institutions and organizations that offer relevant training to increase and enhance all skill levels of firefighters, and to identify and administer training to the community in fire safety, basic first aid and CPR, and all other training requests by the community. The amount of $19,313,322 is requested for the Fire Suppression, Prevention, and Training Bureaus for FY 2020. This reflects an increase of $617,999 from the authorization level of 2019. The requested amount will fund regular salaries, overtime, and benefits for 170 uniform fire positions, including the recently hired 45 recruits. The increase in funding requests for FY 2020 is attributed to retirements and resignations, resulting in a steady increase over future overtime expenditures. Under special funds, our E911 Communications Bureau. This bureau is responsible for operations, maintenance, and administration of the Enhanced Emergency 911 telephone communication system, which provides the island community with the direct access to public safety and emergency response agencies with the intent of reducing response time to situations requiring fire, medical, rescue, law enforcement, and other emergency services. It is further responsible for alerting and dispatching department personnel and equipment to citizens in need of emergency services. I again would like to take this opportunity to express our deepest gratitude to our Governor and Lieutenant Governor for keeping to their commitment of making this account whole again by returning previously transferred 911 funds. Our administration's deep commitment to its public safety needs has put us in a much better position to acquire our next-gen 911 solution, as well as the possibility of building a much-needed 911 call center, further enhancing our EMD's ability to assist those in distress and dispatch the proper assets to calls for assistance. The major objectives of this Bureau are to enhance the effectiveness and efficiencies in providing the community rapid access to emergency public safety services, to provide accurate call taking and pre-arrival instructions to callers in need of emergency assistance, to ensure efficiency and accuracy in dispatching response units to achieve ideal response times for emergencies, and to ensure that responders and support from other agencies or private sectors are notified during times of need. The amount of $2,188,751 is being requested for the E911 Communications Bureau for FY 2020. This reflects a decrease of $56,756 from the authorization level of 2019.
Chief,
Sir.
I'd like to just recognize two of my colleagues that have joined us, Senator Sabina Perez and Senator Jose Piruchalai.
Good
Thank
morning,
you.
Senator.
Thank you, Chief. Please continue.
Thank you, sir. Under personnel services. On personnel services, the amount of $1,541,998 is being requested to fund salaries, overtime, and benefits for 28 classified full-time employees consisting of 3 EMD supervisors, 23 emergency medical dispatchers, and then 1 administrative assistant and 1 secretary 1 position. Under operations, GFD is requesting the amount of $562,753 of the Bureau's budget total request to cover its operation costs for FY 2020. The details in request for funding for operations are as follows. Contractual services, $487,753. Funding in this amount is requested to cover the estimated annual recurring costs on our soon-to-be-completed acquisition of the new state-of-the-art 911 system. The remaining $23,000 will address costs for copier leases, communication equipment and maintenance and repair, bottled water service, and computer repair and services. Supplies and materials, $29,000. The amount requested will allow the Bureau to purchase office supplies and radio communication supplies. Equipment at $37,000. Funding is requested for the purpose of procuring 4 computer systems to replace those that are defective and beyond repair. Miscellaneous, $12,000. Funding is requested for the purpose of procuring uniforms for personnel assigned to E911 Communications Bureau and brochures, pamphlets, decals in support of 911's public awareness campaign. Under utilities, $84,000. This amount is requested to address the E911 Center's power, water, and telephones needed for FY 2020. Under the Flame Fund, the Fire, Life, and Medical Emergency Fund was created by Public Law 2252 to establish a capital outlay revolving fund within the Guam Fire Department to purchase essential emergency rescue, firefighting vehicles, and emergency and life support equipment. Revenues are generated through fire prevention fees and fines, emergency and non-emergency ambulance transports, and for other services authorized by Public Law 29-02. For fiscal year 2020, the Guam Fire Department requests appropriations in the amount of $844,578 to address its needs in operation and capital outlay. GFD is in constant need to procure medical, firefighting, and rescue equipment that are either damaged due to wear and tear or have exceeded its recommended service life. Furthermore, adequate funding for capital outlay will allow GFD to continue its yearly procurement of ambulances, rescue jet skis, and critically needed tanker trucks and life-saving jaws of life extrication equipment. Included is $150,000 for station maintenance, rehabilitation, and renovation that are direly needed at all 15 response facilities. The Tourist Attraction Fund, I'd like to thank the administration and this legislature for allowing the GFD to receive appropriations from the Tourist Attraction Fund. We believe it is absolutely appropriate as we too provide a service to the intent of this fund. For FY 2020, the Guam Fire Department requests appropriations in the amount of $827,074 to address its needs in operation. Contractual services, $356,400. Funding for contractual service is being requested for the purpose indicated below. Medical oxygen bottle refill services, $140,700 to cover costs for refilling of medical oxygen bottles for all ambulances, engine companies, advanced life support units, and rescue units. Repair and maintenance of GFD's fleet, $88,000 to cover costs for maintenance, diagnostic and repairs of all GFD vehicles, and sea crafts that require specialized mechanic skills and or beyond the capabilities of the GFD mechanics. Towing and wrecker services, $4,000 to cover the cost for towing wrecker services for all GFD vehicles requiring such a service. LP gas tank refills, $20,000 to cover the cost for refills of LPG gas tanks at all fire and rescue stations. These tanks are for gas stoves being used for meal preparation at the stations. Watercraft harbor slip rental, $1,200 to cover cost for watercraft harbor slip rental from the Port Authority of Guam for GFD rescue boats at the Agate and Agustin Marina. Appliance maintenance repairs, $20,000 to cover the cost for repairs and maintenance of appliances located at all fire and rescue stations. These appliances consist of washers, dryers, air conditioners, and gas stoves. Commercial trash disposal services, $42,000 for the purpose of trash disposals for all fire and rescue stations. Supplies and materials, $375,174. Funding for supplies and materials are being requested for the purposes indicated below. Emergency medical supplies, $107,300 to cover supplies on both BLS and ALS units. Vehicle parts and lubrication, $75,000 to cover cost of vehicle repair and maintenance. Land and seacraft fuel, $180,000 to cover the fuel costs at the Agustin Marina fuel stations. And janitorial supplies, $12,874 to cover the costs for facility upkeep. And miscellaneous, $95,500. The amount requested is to cover costs for uniform allowances for all uniform fire personnel, bid advertisements for procurement exceeding $15,000, and for subscription services to the National Fire Protection Association and the International Association of Fire Chiefs. This concludes our presentation. I would like to assure you that GFD's proposed FY 2020 budget will provide the adequate funding necessary to sustain our current progression in maintaining and or improving our level of public service. The Guam Fire Department is deeply committed to meet the needs of our island's expectations, to continue to provide the professionalism, dedication, and high-quality service that our island communities have come to expect from the women and men that make up the Guam Fire Department. I am personally committed to work with each of you to ensure the needs of our island are addressed within the realm of the fire service and public safety. Thank you again for allowing me this opportunity, and I look forward to your questions and recommendations.
Thank you, Chief. Thank you for a very good presentation.
Thanks, sir.
Pretty complete.
We've got a good team here, sir.
Thank you, Chief. We will start with the Oversight Chair, Senator Clint Rigel, and then we'll work to my left. And then after Senator Terlai Pidu, then we'll start with Senator Luis Muñoz, and then work to my right. Okay, Senator Clint.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you very much for the presentation this morning.
You're very welcome, sir.
I did notice something, and forgive me if you explained it in your presentation, I may have missed it, but in the special fund for E911, it's showing a decrease for the FY 2020 proposed amount there. Is there a reason why there's a decrease?
Yes, sir. So what that is that's because we're going to be negating the maintenance requirements for the legacy system, which we're currently operating on with the new acquisition of the next generation system.
Okay, thanks. Thank you. Also, a couple other questions. Your staffing pattern shows 23 vacant positions listed for fire recruits, but those positions aren't funded in your budget request for FY 2020. So what I'm wondering is that it looks like you anticipate maintaining the same level of full-time employees in the new fiscal year, but with a decrease in overtime costs. So Are you saying that you have adequate staffing, I guess, for the next fiscal year to be able to keep overtime costs below its current level?
And I'm sorry, one more time with your question, Senator, sorry.
Sure. It looks like you are keeping the staffing level at about the same for the next fiscal year, but there's a decrease in overtime costs, which is good, but I'm just curious about how you guys were able to accomplish that.
And actually, Senator, if you notice, it's actually an increase. So from the 2019, where we were at 2.5 million, and for this year we're looking at 3.2.
Oh, so it's actually an increase in overtime costs.
Yes.
Okay. Now, a couple questions with regards to the transition team's report that the transition team made for the administration. There was a recommendation for privatization of inspection services, and do you know if that would result in any savings? Has there been any more discussion on that?
So we are continuing the feasibility study with regards to the privatization of the inspection service, and actually we weren't going to privatize it. We were going to bring on fire inspectors for that sole purpose. So much like our standalone single service EMTs, we would also have the standalone inspectors. It wouldn't require uniformed firefighters to perform that service. Well, let me qualify that a little bit. We would have them be the ones that go out and actually do the day-to-day inspections, and our uniform firefighters who have that technical background and training would be the ones that do plans reviews, permitting, and things of that nature.
Okay. The transition team also reported recommending establishment of EMT-only positions, and there was some talk about perhaps 40 to 46 EMT positions. Have you discussed that any further, that possibility? And if so, what's the status of that possibility? And would there be any estimated savings to GFD if that was implemented?
Yes, Senator, and thank you for your question. So we continue researching that particular position. There would be a savings by way of, we wouldn't be paying firefighter pay to those EMTs. They would just be getting their salary as EMTs. And we are continuing to research that, and it is a creation of a new position, so that does take some work with DOA as well. And I think it's important for me to note that it is not to remove that responsibility from uniformed firefighters. It's just to augment that particular service.
Okay, so that's something you guys are still working on.
Still pursuing, yes, sir.
Okay. Also, our office received some information about firefighters not being provided with personal protective equipment. Is that something that GFD is supposed to be providing? And if so, is the department, do you believe you're providing adequate personal protective equipment?
Absolutely, sir. Providing personal protective equipment to our fighters is very important. And you know, in the past, we have been challenged with funding those requirements. However, we have been able to provide serviceable gear to our new recruits with the full intent of providing them with new gear once we get the funding.
Okay. We also received some information that some employees use their personal yard maintenance equipment for maintaining firehouses. Do you know if there's any truth to that? And if so, you know, what's GFD's policy on providing those kinds of supplies for, I guess, maintaining the sort of the yards around the firehouses?
Well, Senator, I would like to say that just speaks to the level of dedication of our firefighters and the pride that they take in their service, most especially where they live or at the fire stations. So in that effort, they want to make sure that they put their best foot forward and they present a positive image to our community. So they take the initiative to ensure that our stations are presentable and livable.
Okay. But any plans for maybe providing that kind of equipment for the fire stations?
So it's my understanding we do provide it.
So some firefighters are just augmenting that maybe in certain
That's
areas?
correct.
Is that what it is?
They might prefer Shindawa over a particular brand.
Or maybe the bush cutter's down, and instead of waiting for the process to get it repaired, they just bring theirs in? Is that what's happening?
That could always be an answer as well, sir. Yes. Again, speaking to the dedication of our firefighters.
All right. Also, I know in the cost of utilities, I think you guys are spending about $225,000, or that's what's in the budget, right? $225,000 for power, and I think it's actually showing a decrease from the prior fiscal year. Is that correct?
That's correct.
What's the reason? Why do you guys anticipate a decrease?
That was through a renegotiation of utilities up at the Homeland Security facility for our 911
whose share
center.
it is, or something like that?
Correct. So it's a shared cost amongst the tenants of the building, and so we were able to sit there
Renegotiate it?
and renegotiate
Basically, you
it
guys
more
felt you
proportionate to
weren't-
our usage.
You
Yes,
guys felt you were paying for more than you were actually using in the past?
that's correct.
So now Homeland Security is picking up the difference, basically.
Or it's just equally dispersed amongst all the other tenants of the building.
Okay, gotcha. All right. Has there been any talk about looking into any sort of renewable energy, solar panels on the firehouses in order to reduce the cost of power?
Yes, absolutely. So that is that has been posed to us, and so we are currently looking for vendors or getting quotations for vendors. And that is an effort that we're going to do for all the fire stations as well as our rescue bases. And it is my understanding that is the initiative from the administration as well for all government buildings.
Okay, sounds great. And also, I believe about $10,000 is spent on telephone services for all of the fire stations. Does that include internet and Wi-Fi or anything of that matter?
Senator, no, it does not. So we did have at one time internet funded by public health through a grant with under the EMS office, but because of the limiting factors of that system, it's been preferred by the firefighters to get their own internet system as they're able to their own internet service as they're able to access more training sites and other sites that they need to.
So does that mean the firefighters are paying for the internet service out of their own pocket?
Yes, they do, out of their choice. I mean, we've offered to provide the service, but again, when government provides a service, it has firewalls that limit a lot of things that they would like to access. So they end up buying their own service anyway, and it becomes, basically a wasted funding.
I see.
So over the years, it's just been transitioned that way.
Okay, I see. Maybe you're blocking them from Facebook or Instagram or something.
That is the way of the world today.
Yes, I was going to say that is.
Right.
I don't even have cable myself.
So also, what about the status of each fire station as far as receiving drinking water, delivered in for the water cooler? Do you guys provide that service as well, or are the firemen paying that out of their own pocket?
No, we do not provide that service to them, sir. They usually pay that out of their own pocket if they choose to.
Okay. All right. I don't have any further questions. I appreciate all of your responses and your testimony today and the presentation you've made. So at this time, I'll turn it back over to the chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. I look forward to working with you further.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Lee, ma'am.
Sidus Masi, Mr. Chair, and thank you very much, Chief and the GFD team, for providing this information in your presentation of the budget. And we thank you for all your work every day to provide a well-equipped, highly trained, and motivated force to protect our community. In some of the questions that I asked you, Chief, in your confirmation hearing, I just kind of wanted to go back to that. So it seems to me, and I think page 5 of your presentation, you note the challenges, which include high attrition rate from retirements, military deployments, medical profiles. So that looks like we're set back about 50 personnel in terms of separation from service and recruitment comparison. And so I'm seeing in the personnel numbers that there's no... I just wanted to ask you or give you an opportunity to talk about projections for the next cycle or any promotions that you might be looking at in the near term just to address this issue of a reduced force?
Yes, thank you for your question, Senator. So it is always going to be our intention to ensure that we properly staff our department. And then, of course, the promotions are going to be just as important because, as I indicated, we have lost several people to retirement, and that's usually up in the upper, with several years of service underneath their belt. So that institutional knowledge is actually departing with them. And so promotions are going to be very important in that regard. With regards to bringing on additional people, that's always going to be a focus for us. I will say that the governor also recognizes that need and has placed or tasked all the public safety agencies to announce a continuous open announcement for fire recruits, or not just fire recruits, for all recruits in the public safety arena. And so we are hoping that once we're able to get funding for that we'll already have that list of eligibles established, so that it would just be a matter of reaching out, contacting DOA to get those numbers or those names.
Okay, thank you, Chief. But the proposal for a additional cycle isn't in your budget, so will you be submitting a supplemental budget to be able to provide funding for this need?
Yes, that will be the intent.
Okay, so the committee can expect to receive a request from you for a supplemental budget for a new fire cycle. Do you have a timeline?
I don't have a timeline for that, Senator, but I can get back to you once we are able to establish that.
Okay, thank you very much, Chief. In terms of GFD staff, you spoke about training, and I know that it's listed out here, but it's all kind of in one bucket. So if you could help me to break it down in terms of what you submitted, the suppression and training all together. So I wanted to kind of just break that out and see if you have a separate bucket of funding for training. And I know that, there's travel indicated in terms of going to receive training off island and bringing that back. So
Correct.
If you have kind of a separate total of all of those different things, whether it's online training that you're paying for or training where you need to travel off island, do you have an estimate of what that total number would be?
So the majority of the training is just our ongoing continuous training for professional certifications. Just within the past year, we've had some of our rescue guys chase training elsewhere. And so that's a new thing for us, and we're still trying to understand the cost and the impact for future requests for appropriations for that type of training. So, all of these things are still in the infancy stages, and as soon as we're able to establish the regular occurrence of this training, then we can go forward with the request to fund that training under these training funds that we're requesting for.
Okay, thank you very much, Chief Joey, because we heard the chairman talk a little bit about GFD officials paying out of pocket for their Wi-Fi, paying out of pocket for their drinking water, and they're also paying out of pocket for these trainings, possibly with NFA or other training opportunities. And so we just want to make sure that we're budgeting for that because we want you to be trained. We want to make sure that everybody's ready to rock. So just moving on, we also discussed in your confirmation, Chief, mental health programs with GIPWIC. So I just wanted to give you an opportunity to update us on any programs that you might have worked out with them.
Sure, thank you for the opportunity. So yes, we are, since I've taken the seat, that's been one of my top priority listing items. We have reached out to Pastor Bill, who's one of the pastors on Guam, who's also a part of the Guam Ministerial Association. And he's been very good about coming to visit us, listening to what our needs are for that particular type of service. And so we are continuing discussion with them because it looks like that's something that he would like to sit there and branch out amongst the GMA community so that we have those kind of services accessible throughout the island and not just one person having to go throughout the island.
Thank you very much. I also really wanted to thank GFD for working so closely with your counterparts. We know that there were close to 0 incidences for Golden Week. I think right after they reported, there was a small incident that happened at Two Lovers, which is unfortunate. But in terms of fire and water safety, no incidences. And so we wanted to, or I would like to give you the opportunity to update the committee on any plans that you have for kind of continued collaboration with your sister agencies, especially in terms of water safety education and outreach, because it's also my understanding that GFD has improved their response time with regard to all incidences, but specifically water-related incidences. And so in terms of making sure that our #1 economy, tourism, is protected, and we want to make sure that our visitors and our local community alike is kept safe in our water. So I just wanted to give you an opportunity to talk a little bit about GFD response time and water safety education.
Yeah, thank you for the opportunity, Senator. I will tell you that I'm extremely proud of the professionalism that our rescue folks exude on a regular basis. I mean, they do it almost so routinely that they make it, that it's effortless for them. I will indicate that there was one instance during Golden Week where, fortunately, through collaboration with Chief Ignacio over at GPD, I was able to request the use of the police co-bound down at the Matapang Beach area. So we were able to actually pre-position our rescue assets over there during Golden Week. And as a result of that, because we were in such close proximity, when there was a call for assistance, it took only 5 minutes for our guys to get out there and go ahead and effectuate that rescue. That's largely attributable because of the location.
As opposed to, what would the typical response time be?
So that particular rescue unit, ma'am, is located up in the Dedado fire station. So if that was a regular call, the average time from what has been shared with me is usually anywhere from 10 to 12 minutes, depending on traffic. So having that asset more proximal to the water versus within the village would definitely increase our ability, our response time to the water, to any water instance in that area.
Thank you. I also wanted to ask you about, I know the chairman touched a little bit on increase in overtime, so I just wanted to give you an opportunity to clarify that, because the budget digest that we received, it looks like there's a slight decrease. So it's going from 3.2 million in FY 2019 authorized to the governor's request 3.26. So 3.28 in FY 2019 to 3.26 in 2020.
So there's a decrease, and that is attributable to because of 911, the 911 staff there. The decrease for the overtime with the 911 staff.
I see.
Yes.
Okay. Could you also maybe just clarify, I know you listed it in your challenges, but how has present and future deployments, military deployments, how has that impacted your scheduling?
So I think that impacts the government enterprise-wide. But as it relates to the Guam Fire Department, because we are already challenged with our staffing, anytime we lose somebody for any length of time always poses a little bit of a stressor to our staffing pattern. With these long-term deployments, obviously, that does affect our staffing, and so it requires for our firefighters to have to do RDO cancels. However, we have explored the opportunity to bring back retired firefighters, but we haven't had any real takers.
They're really enjoying their retirement.
Absolutely.
Mr. Chair, if I could just indulge you for 2 additional questions. I wanted to ask about the status of E911 procurement. And maybe if there's a possibility that you might need to exempt that kind of life-saving procurement from a protest that could potentially halt that action. So I wanted to ask you if you could give us an update on E911.
So we are actively pursuing a vendor for the next-gen 911 system. And so we have not awarded any contracts to anybody, but we are in discussion with the vendors who have submitted.
I also wanted to ask if you've received an update from the FCC on their investigation.
No. And if I can qualify my answer earlier with regards to discussion with vendors, each one of the vendors that submitted a packet was rated based on
Thank you.
so they were rated, and so we are in discussion with the number one rated vendor, but we have not awarded any contract or finalized any discussions.
Okay, so in terms of E911, if you could give us an update on the recruitment of EMDs. In FY19, it said that there were 4 anticipated. So were those folks hired, or are you still in the recruitment phase?
So we are still in the recruitment phase. We do have the GG1s down at DOA, and we understand that they have, so the announcement is closed, and we have applicants for that position. I will say that we were looking for 5, but one of our EMD dispatchers wound up deciding to stay with us. So now we're seeking 4 dispatchers instead of the 5.
Okay, great.
So we are definitely anticipating that hire hopefully soon.
Okay. And Mr. Chair, just last question. In the agency narrative, it listed that you were looking to acquire a maintenance facility for the GFD fleet maintenance and repair section. So if you could just provide the committee with an update on that and what that cost might be. So is this included in the Tumuning headquarters that you were mentioning, or is this going to be a separate facility?
With regards to that, I'd like to defer to Deputy Chief St. Nicholas for that.
You are correct. This was included in our first go-around of the potential location of a new Tumuning Fire Station and headquarters that would include a maintenance bay. The area that was identified in the beginning, and as has been briefed to Chief, is where the current GPA substation is located behind the ITC building. So they have a big maintenance bay there that we were targeting to be our next maintenance bay. Currently located at DPW, we do have 2 bays, and they've been gracious enough to host us there. But due to the size of our equipment, the amount of our inventory, we quickly outgrew that area. So to provide a better working space for our mechanics, that's one of our goals.
Chief, the site behind ITC, did you say GPA or GTA?
GPA, Guam Power Authority.
Okay, so that our assets belong to us.
So at one point they were, they're moving all their assets up to, I believe, GIGO.
Yes.
But they still have a footprint there at GPA. But so that's one of the options that we were exploring with GITA, because that is GITA property but leased by GPA.
Okay, thank you very much, Cesar Masi.
Thank you, Senator Lee. Maybe Chief will try to convince your oversight chair to convince Gita, who he oversees, to speed up GPA to move out so you can move in and get their footprint and make it be the GFD's footprint. Make it right. Make it happen. Get her done.
Yeah,
Senator, before I move to Senator Therese Terlai, I'd like to recognize also 2 other colleagues that have joined us. We have Senator Kelly Mars Taitanu. I want to just get the name correct. And then we also have the Vice Speaker, Senator Talina Nelson, has also joined us.
Half a day, Senators.
Senator Therese.
Thank you very
Please,
much.
my colleagues, understand that we will have a second round. If you have another question, don't worry, I'll allow you all to ask another one.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Chief, for your presentation, and for those of you who are here today, good to see you again.
Thank you.
I wanted to also thank you. There've been quite a few fires, especially in the hills in the south, and I want to commend you for, I know it takes, that's a lot of stress. So I guess I just also wanted to ask you, is there anything different that we can do to help you to take care of that? I don't know if it's just my lay, view, but it seems like they're huge, and they've really covered areas that I've never seen burnt before. And I don't know if it's the problem's getting worse, or if you think it's still manageable.
Manageable. It's always going to be manageable for us. We're going to make it work, ma'am. I will tell you that I'm proud of all the personnel that reside in the Guam Fire Department, but our suppression personnel right now you're absolutely correct. They're very busy. They were quite busy, about anywhere from 3 weeks ago to about a month ago. So that is a really good question. How can you help us with that type of situation? It's probably going to take more of a public education piece as far as making people aware of why open burning and the need for them to make sure they create fire barriers around their houses and things of that nature. But when it comes to the actual fire suppression side of it, it does challenge our personnel, more because we're not adequately equipped to handle that type of fire. Forestry firefighting versus structural firefighting is quite different. More specifically, just basically the ensemble that we wear. The structural gear that we wear is pretty restrictive, a bit cumbersome, and to be able to negotiate the uneven terrains in those areas can prove very challenging. Not to mention those ensembles cost $3,800 a piece. So we would like to be able to provide our firefighters with forestry gear, which is significantly cheaper. Still pretty expensive in my opinion, but nowhere near a $3,800 structural suit. And so, in coordination with the Guam Forestry, they do a really good job at taking care of those fires that are a little bit more remotely located. We have adopted more of a street side firefighting, so to speak, as we are able to make access to anything that's coming close to our roadways, whether they're primary, secondary, tertiary roadways. We try to extinguish fires from that from that area, largely because our apparatus are not capable of making entry into those uneven, those rough terrains. And then, most importantly, what we do is we make sure that we provide fire suppression in our residential areas. So if anything is threatening our residential areas, that would be Guam Fire Department's primary area of concern. And then usually Guam Forestry is very good about going out and trying to get to the seat of the fire and make the extinguishing at that level.
Is there any prosecution in regards to those fires, or have investigations at least as to the exact causes?
No, because prosecuting or some wildland fire is very tough. Absent any video, actual witness testimony, or catching somebody in the act, it is very hard to determine origins of wildland fires.
All right, I'm just curious because, of course, that's kind of what we've heard over the years, and I'm just wondering if there's any new technology that's assisting us in that regard. But thank you, and thank you to all of your fire suppression.
Thank you, Senator.
I was very glad to hear that when you're going to build 2 new stations, that you're hoping to be able to incorporate the headquarters. We had asked the chief, years ago for the police side, because they have several things that they are also building, whether they could also incorporate headquarters, but they had said they were unable to. So I'm very hopeful that you're going to be able to. Thank you for pursuing that. Where is that maintenance facility? You do in-house maintenance?
So we do have our own mechanics and heavy equipment mechanics on staff.
All right. And then could I ask, what is the status of the pier on the east side for rescue?
About a month and a half ago, we met with the Department of Agriculture Fisheries Division to re-engage in that discussion. It's my understanding that they had to do a feasibility study in that area, environmental study as well, in the area of the Talafofo Bay. From what I understand, it's coming down to a funding issue.
All right, that's very...
Yeah.
Because that's been going on for years, you're right, and I can't believe, it's almost like circular, that kind of discussion. Have they decided a location?
So it's my understanding, based on that meeting, they were looking primarily at the Talafofo Bay area, but there was some, they did have a consultant from what I understand, that provided coring of the area. They had to do core sampling to ensure that the area would be able to sustain a new boat ramp based on currents and things of that nature. You know, people smarter than me make that decision or do that analysis. But it is my understanding they came down to it's about funding and trying to avail themselves of a particular grant, and so being able to work that has been a bit of a challenge.
All right. And just a couple more questions. One is about the E91 funds that were returned. Are those being used this year for procurement of the new E911 system?
So that is correct, Senator. So
Okay.
yes, and again, we need to thank the governor, lieutenant governor for
Yes.
making us whole again in that fund.
All right. And so you expect that procurement to be done this fiscal year?
That is the plan. That is the intent. Yes.
And that's,
So
so that's why the E911 request for next fiscal year is it doesn't look like a huge increase. It might be a decrease. Or is it an increase? Did I read that wrong?
Thank you, Senator. So at the time of the submission of this budget request, that money was not returned yet. So that's why we only asked for that 400, because that's kind of the
So it is
guesstimate of what the lease would be.
So it's included in the 2020 request?
No. So at the time that we put this in, we only asked for about, I think it was 400, a little over 400,000, because that's the anticipated cost of the lease. Again, we're still in the negotiation phase. But now that the governor has made the fund whole again, it's provided more options. And if we were to use that option, then we would need an additional authorization or appropriation to use that additional monies that are in there. There's upwards of about, I believe, up to $5 million currently in the account.
In the
which
fund?
gives us a lot of wiggle room.
But you said you're already out on an RFP.
Yes, so it's a request for proposal that's in process, and until we nail down the actual cost, then we could come back and ask for it.
All right. So hopefully that will be taken care of with the amount that's in the fund already during fiscal year 2019.
We strongly believe it will be, to include other projects we're looking to do.
All right. And then just on the salaries, the overtime, and then the transition report about kind of restructuring a little bit towards EMTs or additional EMTs, making them work 8 hours instead of firefighter shifts. How soon do you think you are going to implement that? I know that the senator had asked about whether you're in the process of that and that you're working with DOA, but how soon are we looking at? Is that going to occur during FY 2020, and are we going to be seeing, maybe, is that going to give us a savings in operations?
So that is the intent. We are, so in working with DOA, that will require the development of a new position. So we are working on that development. Then, of course, it would route to DOA for them to do their piece as far as, you know, what the salary ranges would be for it, and create the career ladder for that particular position. So the intent is to try and have that established for FY 2020. But again, I just want to be able to qualify that in that these are standalone, that would be their sole purpose, and it would not take away the responsibility, the by law requirement for firefighters to obtain and maintain their EMT certifications.
So would it decrease the need for overtime for firefighters?
So it would help by way of placing those standalone EMTs on the ambulances during our peak call hours. And so we would be able to utilize them during that time frame. And then once we roll into our non-peak call hours, that responsibility would revert back to the firefighters who are already being paid to be on the station.
So it might not decrease overtime for firefighters. They still have to be in place. These are to augment.
Well, it would be able to decrease in the sense that we would be able to keep the firefighters on the truck, on the engine companies, and the rescue units and the hazmat units. So.
All right, great.
Yeah.
All right, and then my final question, Mr. Chair, is that okay, well, it looks like a 644,000 increase in capital outlay, and I know you explained that, but I just couldn't hear it very well. And then there's a decrease in personnel from 359 in 2018, looks like now only 270 for 2020. Am I
Right,
reading?
and we just noticed that is a typo. The 359 is a typo on our.
Oh, okay.
Right, so it should be 2.
Okay, so you've increased personnel since 2018?
That is with the
That's
addition.
great.
That's correct.
All right, and what about that capital outlay? Could you just restate it? What is that huge increase, $644,000 in capital outlay?
That is going to be largely for providing some attention to the fire stations that are, in varying states of disrepair. Yeah, some of the stations are pretty old, and again, it goes back to our firefighters doing their very best to try to maintain the place that they basically live while they're on duty, and so we want to be able to provide some relief for that and get some much-needed repair to all the stations.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Chief.
Thank you,
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Senator Jose Piru Terlay.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Dan, the last time I saw you, you had more hair and less white. So that demonstrates that you are really working hard. And along with that, I want to thank all of you for being here this morning. And I want to thank you for your service and extend that to the rest of your people.
Thank you, Senator.
I just, you know more about what you're presenting here in as far as budget and what activities that you're into, and let me just give you that real commendation of presenting a real divine budget report to the committee. But one of the things that really bothers me, and I'm working on that, and I don't know if you received my letter. I'm asking all the law enforcement, also the police department and the fire department, because your personnel are supposed to be certified post police officer standard training. And when we're going into the 2020 fiscal year, and starting January of 2020 up to December 2020, there's going to be they're going to be applying the certification for the post for each of the members in the fire department. So there's 4 tests that's going to be applied with an interval of 90 days. If you don't pass the first test, you go to the second one. You don't pass the second test, they give you 90 days. You go to the third test. You don't pass the third test, they give you 90 days. So if you don't pass the 4th test, what happened then? Do you know what's going to happen?
Right, so that particular individual would be subject to reclassification from...
Reclassification, and they're gonna lose their job.
They would not be performing as a firefighter, correct?
And this is why I'm very concerned, because I'm working on that. I'm gonna make sure that nobody lose their job. So what I'm trying to do, I'm setting up a roundtable meeting with all the department heads that has to do with life savings and law enforcement and things like that. And maybe we can work out, because I know that the system right now that's being followed by law enforcement and the fire department, I think we're following the Air Force type of fiscal training, APFQT, something like that. So what we need to do is, we're not gonna lower the standard. We're just gonna put some of that standard into the trainings of the fire department and the police, so that maybe along the ways, because I don't really believe on a yearly type of fiscal training. I believe in a consistent fiscal training, like what the military units are doing. They exercise almost every day. And if you continue to do that, you'll be in shape. To do it once a year, like the annual training, and this is why I retired right away, because I couldn't make the physical training that is applied here on a yearly basis. So I just want to ask you to really get together with your command, and maybe you can give me some heads up on just how we're going to do this, because I don't want anybody. We're in here trying to recruit people, and then 2020, December 2020, we're going to release those people. I don't want to see that. So I'm doing everything I can to really just come out with some kind of streamlined type of decision where we would not lose any of the people that is in the fire department and in the police department. Thank you, Dan. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Senator.
Thank you, Thank you, Senator Terlai. Senator Taitano, ma'am.
Hafide, Mananasi Juus. I just have a few questions here. So I remember during the confirmation hearing that you had discussed some of the ways that the fire department is working with the military in fighting fires. And so I think that's important. We're all here together. We're supposed to be working together and sharing some of the responsibilities and burdens. Have you identified further ways that we can be working with the military, leveraging that so that there's more cost sharing or more opportunity or better responses? Have you identified any ways that we might be increasing that relationship with the military to have them be participating with us? Or if not, is that something that you're going to be continuing to think about during this next year?
Well, with regards to our partnership with our federal partners with regards to fire safety, we already have our MOUs in place, and they're pretty. They address a lot of the areas that we would need them in, and they've been very good about supporting that MOA that we have with them. So, I'm always open to discussion. If there are ways to be more efficient, and more streamlined, or process improved, then I'm absolutely willing to have that discussion. But as far as our federal partners are concerned, they've actually been very supportive when we had to exercise those mutual aid requests.
One of the things that you pointed out was your strategy thus far has had to be fighting fire from the street. I know that they do have equipment, and I do see them utilizing it at certain times. They have helicopters that, I'm not sure exactly what it is they drop, but they also do have equipment that can go at least on dirt roads. I don't know that they go off of the roads either. But so I know that they do that in certain areas. Are there additional areas like down in Arahan, and those areas, do they get down south, or is it just near the areas that are near where the bases are, such as up north and maybe down around the naval base area?
So that's correct. Traditionally, the MOU is in place so that if we are absent that particular asset, or we're strained in that capacity, we can exercise that request for mutual aid. But traditionally, what they will do is they'll assist us with wildland firefighting in particular, with their assets. As you alluded to, the HSC 25 folks have been very good about helping us combat some of those wildland fires that are adjacent to federal installations or federal properties. But a lot of those fires will cross over into the civilian population, and they've been very good about making sure that they provide assistance in those areas as well. So other than that, we would be left to work along with our partners over at the Guam Forestry.
Also mentioned during your confirmation hearing, which I was pleased to hear, is you had talked about developing a junior firefighting program. Have you been able to, I know you've only been there a short time and there's a lot of work to do, and we've gotten into fire season, which has kept you even busier, I'm sure. But have you been able to make some headway, and do you see that program getting into place sometime this year? Is that in your budget or your configurations?
Well, thank you for the question and the follow-up on that. So, yes, to answer your question, we have been able to identify a program that would help a little bit with funding as far as the grant is concerned. And so we are definitely aggressively pursuing that option. And we're hopeful that we'll be able to get a program out. We're targeting before a lot of the kids get back to school. So we are, yes, to answer your question, we're definitely actively pursuing that, and we are very hopeful that August, September timeframe, we will be able to launch a program, a pilot program, just to see how interested our youth would be.
Malik, that's very good to see that kind of proactivity, and that in a short period of time you're already getting that underway. I think that's important. We have to look at these critical professions and think about bringing in the next generation to ensure that the safety of our community it continues, of course.
Absolutely.
Now, you also mentioned the forestry fire uniforms, and that those are quite different than the uniforms for structural fires that you're using now. They do come with a cost. Have you been able to identify any programs that would help provide those uniforms, or any sort of partnerships that could help you get those uniforms? It seems like they would be incredibly important in helping you out there we have so many forestry fires every year that they would be incredibly important to the safety of your firefighters, but also in your ability to take care of our community.
And I agree, but to answer your question, that funding source is actually what is used for agriculture's forestry division to be able to sustain their operations and of course provide the PPEs for their personnel. We will continue to work with forestry to see if there's any smidgen of surplus that they might be able to assist us in that regard. I will tell you that we've tried to work very cooperatively with them, and they've been listening to our pleas and our calls for assistance, because that is their primary responsibility, and we actually provide the service as a supporting element. So I will continue that discussion with our forestry folks.
So you can help guide me as to how related this is, but is there anything we should be considering for that forestry unit that makes the overall strategy of what you are doing and what our community needs? Is there, we will get a chance to hear from them, of course, as well, but is there anything from your perspective that you would like to say that we should be considering in looking at the budget and the needs of the forestry division that will complement the work that you're doing for the safety of the entire community?
I would prefer to defer to the forestry to be able to make that suggestion to you. They're probably better apt to answer your question as far as what their capabilities are, or their growth potential might be, or what their operations will look like in the future.
Masi, of course, that makes sense, and but I would imagine the stronger that they are, the more that's going to be a strong partnership in working with your unit. But thank you for all of the answers.
Thank you, Senator.
Thank you, Senator Taino. Just to remind you that Senator Kelly is also, Senator Clinton Ruggiero is also the oversight for the Department of Agriculture that covers the forestry. And likewise with GFD. So I think Senator Clinton, get her done, right? Okay. Now I'm going to move on to Senator Muña. And like I mentioned earlier, we're going to start to my right now and just go down the line, because I know that the Vice Speaker's got a question for you folks. All right, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll just be very brief. First of all, I just want to congratulate you on your position as
Thank you.
Chief. Welcome to the world of asking the legislature for money. So I just want to say that I don't think there's any question how close the agency is to my heart, because 2 generations before me have started their career and finished their career in the fire department. So you do have a very special place in my heart, of course. So I'll try to support you as much as I can. And if you're anywhere around my age, I've seen your careers to where it's at now. So I just want to congratulate you for all of the hard work that you guys do. Does your budget also include prior year obligations as well?
No, it does not, Senator.
It does not?
No.
Okay. Is there a plan to address any of that, maybe with a supplemental, or I'm not sure?
Yes, it's my understanding that'll take place, yes.
Okay. Also, I noticed a section on your presentation that you continue to analyze the feasibility of establishing a non-firefighter single-purpose EMT position. Now, is that, if you can expand a little bit on that discussion of a non-firefighter EMT, will this increase or decrease the costs of the agency? And how would that benefit the fire department?
I'd like to defer to the deputy on this one.
Okay.
Thank you, Senator, for the question. So we've been trying to push this initiative since 2014, to tell you the truth. And when you put all the facts on the table and you do the analysis, it can equate to as much as 150,000 a year in savings. Now, while that seems like a very small amount, and the term I like to use is negligible, what you will get in your return on investment is burnout prevention, employee morale going up because of that burnout prevention, and possibly because they're dedicated to a specific career field or a specific task, the quality of care may improve. And I want to say that very cautiously because our current firefighter EMTs are awesome at what they do, at what we do. But when we have a dedicated EMT, they can just they'd be able to do maybe a little bit more, just like how our rescue guys put in a little more into their training when it comes to diving and rappelling, just like our hazmat guys do a little more in their training when it comes to responding to all hazards. So when you have a focus area, then they become more and more proficient in that area. So we believe those are the return on investments that you will get.
Okay, but that doesn't take away from the mandate, though, right? That the
Correct.
firefighters
All
have-
firefighters, just like all across the nation and I would say the world, the minimum is actually EMT. Now they're starting to go up to paramedic level, which is another initiative that this administration and fire chief has put on the table as well.
Okay. Okay, and then just finally, not that I'm disappointed in the face of the leadership here with the GFD, but I'm noticing that even on the panel here in the legislature and all across the government agencies, that there's the faces of leadership is changing. You see more females. So I'm just wondering if, has there been, are you encouraging, have you seen a rise in some females, younger females, maybe joining the fire department? And is there like an increase in the leadership, I suppose, in the female?
So the answer to your question is yes. So the 21st cycle actually graduated 2 female firefighters who have assimilated into the ranks and are doing stellar work within their capacities. So as far as recruitment of female, it's entirely up to them. If they want to come out, they'll have equal playing, equal grounds to be able to come out and apply. So I would strongly encourage them to come out.
Okay. To make it a little bit more, I guess, desirable, right, for not just the men, but also for women as well.
If I may add, the Guam Fire Department does have a history of a female who rose to the ranks of Battalion Fire Chief, Chief Jalevix Regis, who was an awesome EMS chief and probably mentored at least 4 out of 5 of us on this table. So, we welcome the leadership. Leadership is what it's all about. Gender is not an issue for the Guam Fire Department.
Okay, but you do see some recruits and increasing.
That is correct.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Thank you, Senator Muna. Senator Tello.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good evening, gentlemen. Thank you so much for all you're doing with so little that you have. I greatly appreciate doing it, especially when I heard you talking about, you take pride in your stations, and that says a lot about you guys, and I really appreciate that. I guess I'm just going to go into this one question I have. It might have been answered. I had a couple calls. I'm trying to avoid not leaving here on this hearing, but I had to take a call. The area that you say capital outlay, was that discussed yet? Why is it so substantially more?
Yes, Senator.
It was discussed
Yes.
earlier, and is that capital improvements, or what is going to pay for this? Again, is that vehicles or equipment or?
So no, that would come out of the flame fund, which is earmarked to be able to do the purchase of vehicles, equipment.
Okay, good. We were at the Sinahanya groundbreaking the other day, and they mentioned how you guys are going to have your own station on the side. They're going to put one. So are you looking at substituting the one in Sinohanya and being there?
So what that build will do is actually just relocate the the present Sinohanya Fire Station, which is,
Pretty old.
well, is old.
Very old.
To be kind, yes, it's old, and we can't even park an apparatus there because our apparatuses are so much bigger, and so the relocation would happen with that new build. And so that would provide capabilities in that area that we weren't able to have with the existing stations. So we're looking forward to that. And I'll do the arm wrestling with Chief Ignacio as far as
The permit. You had them on the permits.
Oh, yeah.
You had me on the permits too.
But he carries a gun, so.
So is that moving forward, or I mean, this year, do you anticipate needing any additional funding? I know that HUD would probably be the one you'd go after to have that building, constructed. But is there any other funding that you're looking for in this FY 2020 budget to foresee this opening up?
At this particular point, Senator, no. However, once we're able to establish the actual cost, that would be something we would probably need to do.
So it's not in this one. We'll wait till next year?
More than likely, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
But that's good to hear. It was really good news. By the way, Chief, how many paramedics do you have under your department?
At present, we have no paramedic level EMTs. We have advanced life support, which are intermediate, or correction, they're classified as advanced EMTs now. They've changed the classification from intermediate, which it used to be, to advanced now. So they're one tier below a paramedic.
And why don't you have any paramedics?
Largely, it's a very expensive program to roll out. Just to give you an example, we are in active pursuit of trying to roll out the paramedic program. That is something that the governor from day one with me has asked me to pursue, and so we are actively pursuing those avenues, and then we are in discussion to roll that program out with GCC and a service stateside. But just to give you an idea, it would cost for this particular program about $50,000 per paramedic to be able to get them fully trained and certified.
Well, if I'm not mistaken, most individuals, like in the mainland, when they go to these schools for paramedic school and become certified paramedics, and then they apply for positions at fire stations. I don't know how this would cost GFD any money for this when they would pursue that career like a nurse would go to school. They would pay for their school, their books, tuition, and then they go and apply at the hospital. So a paramedic would go to school, pay for his tuition, and do the same thing and apply it at the fire department. So I tell you what, Chief, this probably threw you a wrench right here, but paramedic program is something I hope you look into. And move forward on this. And I know you would have to work with GCC, to get the program up and running. But there are paramedics that, there are a couple people here that are paramedics, actually.
Yes, ma'am.
That can apply. So maybe this would be something to look into. I appreciate it if you could. Okay?
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you. How's your website? Is it up and running? Does everything on it that's required by law?
Yes. So we went back and did a scrub of everything, and we have updated to the best of our ability. Yes.
You must have heard me talking to DPW because they're way behind, and especially when it comes to permits that you put out. It's very important to have the website. You don't want individual people getting the wrong message or what they can and cannot do. The E911, I'm glad you answered that question. I heard that. But there was something regarding the E911. I think one of my colleagues asked about FCC. Didn't go into that. What exactly are you talking with FCC with respect to that? Okay.
I'd like to allow the deputy to be able to answer that question.
Thank you, Chief. Okay.
So annually, they send out a questionnaire and we submit reports. We are compliant in that respect. The report deadline was actually June 30th. We've already submitted it since May the annual report. So we won't hear any response from FCC till later on this year for this year. We already all know what the FCC response for last year was, which resulted in the return of the 911 funds back to 911. So we have not received a follow-on response since then.
What exactly is, what kind of relationship with the FCC? I'm sorry, I really
So
don't.
FCC just submits a annual report for all states and territories up to Congress. They don't have any statutory authority over our fund, but they do send down guidelines and regulations. If you do charge for 911, we got to follow the rules. But as far as the actual statutory authority that vested by you guys into the governor.
It's just their recommendations, that's all they're putting
Right.
out there, and their comments.
Right,
Okay,
it's like a
that's what it-
pass-through,
Okay,
law.
I was
by law.
wondering how authoritative they are toward you, but they're not, it's just an annual report.
Correct.
Okay,
Correct.
thank you on that. You mentioned in your presentation about fees that you're looking at increasing, fees and fines, and how much percentage are you looking at increasing this? And if you have already started, how far along are you with the requirements to increase fees and fines?
So we've actually already had discussion with Senator Vigil
Right.
and presented some of our recommendations to him. But if I could, I'd like to actually defer to Chief Burrier, who is actively compiling all that data for us.
Just repeat the question, please.
Yes. Oh, so the question is, the fees and fines that were alluded to earlier, that you are planning on raising them. And, there's a process to do that. So my question is, what is the percentage amount that you're going to raise? And secondly, how far along in the process are you? And I guess I'm going to add a third one. What do you stand to generate in funding? If you are going to generate money, is it going to happen in this fiscal year? And how much is that?
Well, as far as the timeline, I wouldn't be able to really say on that because of the whole process that we go through. I hope it'd be expedited to where we could do it within this fiscal year. But as soon as we are able to increase our fees would be optimal. Now, as far as where we want to go, our fees are antiquated to a law that was enacted in 2005 that gave us a flat rate of just for transport or for emergency or transport for non-emergency at 95 for the non-emergency and 195 for the emergency. So we want to bring it up to a level to where we'll be able to bill at an appropriate level to still be able to clear the 100% of the Medicare and Medicaid reimbursable rate, and also be able to allow for whatever negotiated rates we can do with the private insurance companies. And with that, we looked at the industry average. So we would see probably a little over a double of the rate of what we have currently, because we're so far below what a national standard is, and also well below whatever the Medicare rate is. So the Medicare rate, for example, we bill $195 for emergency transport, and they would reimburse with us at 80% of that. And so our billable rate is far below. Now, if we were to bring it up to a level where we're able to capture the full amount of the Medicare reimbursable rate, the reimbursable rate for an emergency transport goes to about $456. And then they would give us 80% of that. So there is a big difference in it. So if we were to have an increase in our rates to capture 100% of all reimbursable rates with Medicaid and Medicare, then we would see an automatic doubling of what, actually a little bit more than double what we make now, because we make 80% of the 195, and then we would be able to make 80% of the 456. And that's just for BLS transport, because we don't bill for the different levels. ALS, for the advanced life support level, which we do provide with our advanced EMTs, who are certified at the advanced EMT level, but we perform at closer to the paramedic level. And doing that, they have an ALS 1 rate and they have an ALS 2 rate. And the ALS 1 rate can be reimbursable of around 556, and the ALS 2 rate is a reimbursable around 846. So we would see an increase in other services that we would have to correlate with the capturing of those fees. And then we would have to have another negotiated rate with the private sector, because we can't have anything being billed and reimbursed to us lower than the federal rate. Mm-hmm. So it is a lot to take in as far as the increase that we would require, but that would help us maintain the operations that we currently have and then add to our services that are much needed, like our bringing in new ambulances for our peak hours, because we do have a designated peak hour area where our runs increase. We've seen an over 6,000 run response increase from calendar year 2017 to calendar year 2018. So we went from 19,500 runs to 25,650 some runs. So we've seen with the population increase that we're starting to see coming in, we're seeing an increase in responses. And with that, our peak hours are usually between the hours of 9 in the morning to midnight on most days. So having additional ambulances during that time, we would need that. And having increased fees would help us with that. And then when we start looking at the initiative that was passed in the previous legislature for community paramedicine, and we get our people to paramedic level, then we would see a community paramedicine program being stood up and brought to the service of the people.
Well, besides the fees, what about the fines? Are you planning on increasing those fines as well?
I'd have to defer back that. Yeah.
Okay.
So that is correct, Senator. Fines we'd be seeking an increase in the fines as well.
Chief, how far, I forgot to ask, how far are you? Are you just in talking phase right now, or have you already assessed the increase and like this is how much this is going to cost us, how much this fine is going to raise up? Have you done that already?
That's correct. We have done that.
Okay, so now you're just waiting for legislation?
Yes.
Okay, so you're further along than I thought you are, and you probably can get this done by November.
With this body's support,
Sure.
yes.
So that means you'll start generating funds by December and January, right? So
that is
you're going to
correct.
make some money by then.
I think let me pull the handbrake a little bit on you folks. All the fees and fines across Gov Guam is going to be addressed, and then we'll identify Guam Fire, Department of Agriculture, and so forth, because there are a lot of fees across Gov Guam that needs to change, because it's not even meeting the expense that the agency is performing. And exactly what you said, the reimbursement. So on that side, Senator Tello, I'm hoping that we would get all these fees in and that it would be addressed earlier than November so that it'd be part of the Budget Act. Because it may, when the fees go up, general fund reduce. Other agencies that need more money, general fund can get that. And some agency will start getting more self-sustaining based on just their funds. Okay, Senator?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for that opportunity to, for explaining that situation too. But I think it's also important that we realize that you jump fees and fines up so substantially, it's very difficult for our community to pay for these. That's why it's best to go in a gradual stage, to prepare the community for these high increases, because you're talking about almost 100% increase, up to $400 from $195 to up to $4 something. So we have to be careful in doing this process, and that it's gradual. So that being said, I appreciate your time and efforts, and please look into that paramedic program. Thank you,
Senator.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Will Castro.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First of all, thank you, Chief, and to your team for their leadership and professionalism. I also want to thank members of the fire department for their contribution back to the community. Often we attribute credit to our military partners when they give back to the community, but folks like Art Stanley here remains active in youth volleyball. So I just want the listening audience to know that our men and women in law enforcement emergency response are just as big of a contributing factor to this community as anybody else. From time to time, I would open my office on the side of the road in hopes that I can address the needs of the community. But to be frank with you, it's oftentimes like that I learn the most about other things in the organization. And so from that, my two questions are stemmed. But before I get to that, some old business, Chief. There was a time in the previous administration we were addressing emergency communications. It was a $12 million endeavor. I think it was $2 million dedicated funding source from the Department of the Interior. Unfortunately, there was no closure to that, but I'd like to encourage you, because you have the internal capacity to take that ball and run with it with this administration. It got caught up somewhere in the Attorney General's office in the procurement process, but it's so essential to upgrading the emergency response communication system, whether it's the handheld units or the poles that address your what we call blackout areas. Maybe I'm giving it the wrong name, but there's some blackout areas still on the island. For example, like the Pauget area or the Marble area. So just I would encourage you to look at that again. Back to that side of the road conversation, one of your personnel invested the time and energy to educate me about your role in the community, specifically about emergency response as it relates to extreme weather conditions. I think this is an under-recognized component of the department, and so my question, because it is kind of weaved into your mission of effective response to medical emergencies. At first, I didn't think it was, the search and rescue, search and recovery. So my line of questioning deals with search and rescue, or a SAR team. So does the Guam Fire Department have a quote-unquote SAR team? Is that a distinctive component of the department, or does everybody kind of do that?
That is correct. That would fall under our search and rescue.
Okay, that's good to know. Is there any type of compensation associated with that kind of activity? Is it a special classification of people? For example, let me get to this. So, I would imagine you have to be physically fit, have to have specialized training. If you just look at the two incidences, one on Guahan with the flash flood, unfortunately it claimed the life of an FD man. And then even further north in Forbidden Island, when you see 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 tourists get stuck, it's a specialized unit that has to be mobilized to go out there and retrieve these people and save their lives. So when they're activated and put their lives on the line like that, do they get compensated for that kind of work, or do they fall in line with everybody else?
So what I'd like to do is I'd like to defer to the deputy for that answer.
Okay.
Thank you, Senator, for that question. And I apologize to Chief. In his 5 months of being the fire chief, I haven't approached this subject yet. We're still trying to, figure out the fundamentals. But yes, what you're speaking to is either incentive pays or certification pays for our specialty units. So as it stands, the only incentive pay that we have is 15% for being on the ambulance. But, the original intent of that 50% was to entice our firefighters who were not required before to maintain their EMT certification. But now that the EMT certification is by law, and with the increase of our salaries, with laws like the 40% increase, it's a general position that incentive is officially taken care of. So now we would like to move that incentive out to the rescue unit, hazmat unit, and our and keep it with the advanced life support unit. So that, because you're right, they do specialize in that area. It does require a lot more certification than we provide to the base firefighter EMT. And
I appreciate that, and I don't want to belabor the discussion here, but if I can get invited back to maybe meet with you at the department with the chair and anybody else who wants to attend, I just never fully appreciated the importance of that unit, and maybe even hazmat. But when these folks get on a boat, typhoon conditions, and go out and rescue people who got on kayaks and put their lives in jeopardy, there's something to be said about that. And so I'll close that discussion with a follow-up question. Is there a commander or somebody of stature in the organization that is responsible for a specialized unit? You know how GPD has SWAT and DOC has SORT? Does GFD have SAR?
That is correct. So we have 2 battalion chief officers that manage both the A platoon and the B platoon of the search and rescue unit.
Awesome, that's really good to hear. Let me get to my second area of interest. So emergency call center employees. Again, I haven't really fully developed an appreciation for exactly everything you folks do, but when I do, I thank you for that. And it dawned on me, emergency call center folks are dealing with frantic people. So there's emotional trauma associated with that. And forgive my ignorance, are emergency call center personnel classified as first responders? And if they're not, would classifying them entitle them to any type of additional benefits so that they can carry out their duties effectively and even seek any type of recovery if needed?
That's a great question, Senator. And nationwide, there's actually the first state, and I forget which state it was, finally recognized, appropriately recognized our 911 call takers, Texas, as first responders. And rightfully so, they are the entry level to all emergency responses, not just fire, also law enforcement for needs, crisis, and chaos. So yes, I believe this body would do well by reclassifying them and making them peace officers or identified as first responders.
Thank you, Chief. I'll be sure to get with you.
As a matter of fact, that was just this week that they recognized them in Texas.
Thank you. So I'll be sure to get with the appropriate committee chairman so that we can move in that direction. My last statement, I'll close with this, Mr. Chair, is not a question, but I want to encourage you also to look at the professionalization, if you will, of lifeguards or folks who serve at like beaches. It's kind of a search and rescue extension. So I had the privilege of visiting the fire department in Maui. And I don't know if you recall, Chief, but I might have texted you when I was there. I was surprised to learn that their lifeguards, I actually want to have a video footage of an interview, they're actually incorporated into the county or whatever their municipal rubric, the hierarchy is, for the fire department. And I thought that was really interesting because it does a lot. First, it professionalizes them in terms of certain types of credentials you might have to uphold. But more important than that, in my humble opinion, would be the ability to move upward in terms of advancing to different parts of the department for professional growth. And so I want to encourage you to also think about that. And thank you. Thank you for your time, Chief, and thank you all for your professionalism. Thank you, Art Stanley, for helping our youth in volleyball. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. And Art does a great job with that.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Sabina Paris.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and Hafaday, Chief Daniel Stone,
Hafaday,
and
Senator.
Staff. So it's nice to see you again. I just, I guess, have a couple questions regarding the staffing patterns. So what is the breakdown depending on the departments that you have? I noticed in your presentation you had 28 at the emergency medical rescue group out of the 242 FTEs. How are they divided amongst the different divisions?
Well, so those particular employees are actually the emergency medical dispatchers that reside up at the 911 center. So that is their primary focus.
Right. So, but of the all the staff underneath the Guam Fire Department, how is it divided up amongst the different divisions?
As far as personnel are
Yes.
concerned, where they each reside, is that the
Right.
question, Senator?
Right.
To generalize the numbers, so we got about 28 emergency medical dispatchers. Roughly 170 firefighters are assigned to the fire trucks and ambulances, and roughly 38 rescue personnel are assigned to our 3 different rescue units. The rest are spread around, peppered around the different bureaus doing dual-hatted jobs.
Okay, great. I've also noticed, I was just doing a quick calculation about the average pay, and looking from 2018 to 2019 and 2020. In 2018, the average was $93,655. In 2019, it was $118,454. And then when you go into 2020 budget, it's $123,400 and some. Can you explain the possible reasons for that increase?
So this is always a subject every year across the nation. You know, firefighters getting what they pay. But you need to look, I mean, this is a long, deep dive, so, please stop me when you think I've said too much. Bottom line is firefighters work 120 hours. So with that salary, they get paid at 106 hours straight pay and 14 hours at time and a half. Now, notice I didn't say overtime. Time and a half, because these are regular scheduled hours that they know they're going to work, just like any 80-hour worker is going to work. Our federal counterparts here on Guam, they work 144-hour schedule, and they get time and a half for 34 hours. Now, the reason why they get that is because of the 7K exemption of the Fair Labor Standards Act, which is intended to be the bottom line. Underlying fact is that it's a cost-saving measure for firefighters and what we do. So the bottom line is what is fire service? Fire service is incomparable to the police officer, and we love our brothers in blue. But in order to create law enforcement or to have law enforcement, all you need is training, a badge, and a weapon. Put that officer out on the street, one officer, and you have law enforcement. In order to do fire service, the number is 2.33. So for every one firefighter that you hire, you need to hire 2.33 more firefighters. And that's to maintain the 2 in 2 out rule. So imagine in that first hour of pay, 1 police officer versus 4 firefighters. So as a cost-saving measure, how do we keep 4 firefighters on for 24 hours? Instead of hiring at the 80-hour schedule, 4, 4, and 4, right, is 12. You would pay 70% more if you were to put a firefighter on an 80-hour schedule. So by paying that firefighter on the 24-hour schedule, it's a huge cost savings by 70% roughly. So, we go through this all the time whenever they look at what firefighters get paid, but they don't understand, or what people don't understand, is how much they work. They work a lot more than what they're getting paid. So, for example, to prove my point, the 80-hour worker gets paid overtime at 81 hours and above. A firefighter can't get that time and a half until after 106. So you're saving 26 hours of time and a half pay on this firefighter, and that's because of the 7K exemption. Why does it go up every year? Is because of salary increments, promotions, and such things as that. And what you're seeing in this year is, if you look at our category 111, we actually went down in salary, and the reason why is because we've had retirees, about 17 of them, and for every retiree, we can actually bring on 2 to 3 new recruits. And, this is even a bigger subject, because if you allow us to retire at an earlier age, we wouldn't be paying so much for the seasoned firefighter, and we can bring in new blood. You like how I stuck that in there, sir? So. But yeah, that's the reason, ma'am. Majority of that increase is due to salary increments and promotions.
Okay, thank you. Is your billing outsourced or is it in-house?
So billing for the ambulance services or EMS services is outsourced. It's a third party.
Okay. Just because on a personal note, I think. How often do you send out bids to procure services for that particular billing?
And I'll default to Chief Burrier for that one. He handles the billing for the EMS side.
So when we first got the ambulance services, it was done under a 5-year billing contract, and we're currently right now drafting up a new RFP to put it out again to renew our services in order to have that. We find it more efficient to have an outsourced billing company to handle all the issues with Medicare, Medicaid, and insurance processes because of the audits that come with it, and then it keeps it clean.
Yeah, because I've had experiences where it got sent to the wrong address, or I get multiple billings even though it was paid. So I think it would be good to kind of take a look at the service.
And part of that issue is it's not so much the billing company that's has an issue. It's the collection of information from patients at the scene. our personnel don't always have the opportunity to get complete billing information, and then our billing company would then have to contact the hospital and get the billing information from the hospital, and that does take time. What we do get is if we get a mailing address, they will tend to bill both parties, and the insurance, once they get the insurance information, if it wasn't in the patient data when we first collected, they will eventually get it. And then if the if the individual made a payment and the insurance company then comes back and pays it, they will reimburse those individuals, and they have done so in the past.
Okay, thank you. Is there anybody on your staff that is in compliance with Section 5141, which requires training for procurement?
Yes, our procurement officer, Lillian Pareda, and Lillian Tadella and Cami Pareda they just completed the modules.
Okay,
yes.
Great. Do you guys have any sole source emergency procurements?
Not at this time.
Okay, that's good to know. And how quickly can a procurement take place? How fast is that for you guys? What's the fastest turnaround time?
We've had some quick ones. Like when our ambulances, when we're almost down to zero, procurement was done in under 30 days. But we've also had some long ones that ended up having to be canceled. It's all about processes and the ability of our GSA to get things done, knowing that they're dealing with all the agencies and their procurement issues.
Yeah. So I had a conversation. I think some of the problems might be the back and forth. If there's a problem with the specifications, there's a lot of back and forth that goes on, and that's what kind of delays the process. So I just hope there was a more. I just want to work with you guys on that one, or have that run a little bit more smoothly.
I know GSA at the latter part of last year, they've been trying to improve those processes. They're starting to delegate procurement out to the agencies, which is why they put on that last round of modules for procurement. Mm-hmm. So they've been, doing the test pilot. We're one of them. We're one of the agencies that are doing it. I think it's up to 10,000 for procurement. And as we continue, they continue to release the reins on us a little bit. Hopefully we can procure our more specialized equipment, like fire trucks and ambulances on our own.
Okay, great. So do you, as an agency, do you work closely with the police department?
Absolutely. So we work almost hand in hand when it comes to emergency response. Typically a 911 call comes in, and then an officer is dispatched, and then of course the fire service is dispatched, or EMS service is dispatched as well. So yes, the answer is yes.
Okay. So for the search and rescue, for the boating arena, I noticed in the police department budget they requested for about a $600,000 federal matching, and pertaining to search and rescue. And then here in your budget, you under flame, you are requesting a capital outlay of, I have to take a look for it, for $700,000. Is there an overlap that is occurring in regards to, there's an item here that says jet skis. Is there any type of overlap that is occurring with search and rescue and this particular line item?
No, ma'am, from what I'm looking at, there is no overlapping.
Okay, so the capital outlay, that's to procure firefighting equipment?
Equipment, vehicles, things of that nature, yes, ma'am.
The other thing I noticed is some of the equipment that you are requesting at a cost of $37,000 for 4 computers. Can you explain the cost of that? For 4 computers at $37,000?
Yeah, so, computers is just a general term, but all the support structure that goes with it. So that particular one is, I believe, under the 911 fund. To just sustain what we currently have until we get our new equipment, our new next gen in.
So is that under a contract? is the 37,000, is that already under contract? Or is that an estimated cost?
I'm sorry, what page are you looking at,
Oh,
Senator?
I'm sorry, this is the handout.
Oh, the
Sorry,
testimony.
this testimony?
That's found on page 13. You guys got that? It's on the bottom, page 13. Equipment, 37,000. 4 computers.
Yes, so that is again under the 911 fund. So, we currently have 8 workstations up at 911. And, again, as we've said for many years, it's an antiquated system. So we're just, doing enough to keep it alive and working until the next gen moves in. So the question is it under contract? No, it's not.
Okay.
It's such an antiquated system that the vendor has ended the contract with us.
So there's a potential to lower that cost if you get a competitive bid?
Absolutely.
Okay, great. What are the steps that you've done to streamline your operations? I noticed you had some savings here. In regards to contractual services, it went down about 100,000, or a little under 100,000. What did you do to get the savings?
So part of that savings was realized when we no longer have a contractual service for storage. Storage of records, like an archive is what so we do that at the headquarters building now. Takes up a lot of space, but we did realize some savings with regards to that.
That's great. And then I also, the savings with, see anything else? Oh no, maybe not. Okay, I'm sorry. The other question, there seems to be discrepancy between the miscellaneous on the budget. It's at 107,500, and then on the handout here, it's at 95,500. Can you explain the difference?
In which fund are you referring to, Senator?
Okay, so I'm looking at 2 different documents. The one is this huge document here, and then the one that on the testimony that you submitted today. On the back page.
And so that's a 95.5, right?
Yes.
That would be
so-
under the TAFT fund, the Tourist Attraction Fund?
Okay, and so the 107,000 in the executive request, or the governor's request, so what is the additional difference due to?
Right, and if you look in the presentation, Senator, what that addresses for uniform allowance for our firefighters, bid advertisements for procurement, and our subscriptions to the National Fire Protection Association as well as the International Association of Fire Chiefs.
Yes, I see that, but
Right.
with the testimony you submitted today, it says 95,500, but on the budget handout, it's 107,500. So if you can explain the difference.
I think, Chief, you need to look at your page 14 under your 911. You got 12,000 under miscellaneous, and then you got the 95,500. And I think that's where it accounts to 107. So maybe you can explain
You're
that.
correct. So it's 12,000 under 911 for miscellaneous, the 95,000 on the
Cooperation.
I see.
for TAF.
I see, okay. So things got moved around. Do you have any federal funds currently that you are looking to apply for, or to help kind of reduce the budget request?
So every year we apply for different federal funds, assistance to firefighters grant, safer grant, there's a prevention grant. Currently we're utilizing Department of Interior discretionary funds to purchase our 2 tanker trucks that's in procurement as we speak, as well as the future renovation of our Agat fire station. So to answer your question, yes, we do chase after federal funds wherever we can.
Okay, great. I think that's all my questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator.
Thank you. Vice Speaker, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning, Chief and Deputy Chiefs.
Good morning, ma'am.
I wanted to ask you about the retirement plan for the fire. Basically, thinking it would encompass the whole law enforcement entity to include fire. How is the average retirement plan now? What age do they retire at for the fire department, the firemen? Does that make sense?
So right now, Senator, under the hybrid, I believe it's 1.75. It is 62 years of age.
62 years of age. Do you believe that 62 years of age is a reasonable age to retire, considering the work required as a fireman? How old are you?
Right. So 62 for fire service for somebody who's going to stay on the line as a firefighter would be extremely challenging for even the most fittest of individuals.
Okay. Have you done, perhaps not you, but I'm sure maybe some of the deputy chiefs, are there other practices in different municipalities across the nation that has a different retirement plan for firefighters?
Yes, is from what I understand, yes.
What retirement plan that you know of do you believe would be the best, most beneficial after the research that you have completed?
Deputy, you want to handle it? Yeah.
Thank you, Senator. Such an excellent question, because this is a major issue plaguing our firefighters. So, again, to go back to our schedule, the average person works 80 hours, is 2060 a year. Firefighter works at 120, so they basically work 3 weeks out of a 2-week pay period. So if you were to calculate that out, in 20 years of service, that firefighter would have actually worked 30 years. And so what that normally equates to the age of about 52 to 55. So there are a lot of municipalities that do the calculation, and unfortunately may require firefighters to put in a little more per pay period into retirement to allow them to retire at the age of 52, 55, or 30 years of service. So there are some plans out there.
Have you discussed amongst your ranks perhaps a possibility of making a transition similar to this? What is the feel of our state law or our island law for retirement for the firemen? How do they feel if they were given a different retirement option? Have they addressed any concerns or?
Yes, I think the general feeling is that we would like to discuss options. With the hybrid, that was a plus. But, of course, now they're talking about age. And just as the chief stated, it is rough to be a firefighter at that age. So, but yes, that discussion is ongoing. And I believe, we need to find out who are the right stakeholders that we can approach. Is this something that's a GovGuam-wide thing that needs to happen, or can it be specific to firefighters?
So do you think that this type of discussion in regards to retirement would the best platform, or perhaps a good platform to present it at, is within the Post Commission? Because I'm thinking that not only would we address it for the firemen, but we'd also address it for all law enforcement agencies.
It's my understanding, and I have a very rudimentary understanding of the retirement as it's being presented or being discussed. But I believe that's a discussion that would probably better be directed towards the retirement fund or the retirement office.
Right, but yes, of course, you'd have a retirement representative there. But is this something that the Post Commission can work on and really I'm hoping to see something happen, not just an open discussion, but if really the nature of your job is, you serve 20 years, but really the toll on the body is way beyond that. I think that we need to start looking at taking better care of our law enforcement and firemen and giving them that option. So thinking the leadership is at the Post Commission for all of these agencies, and perhaps a collaborative effort can be done to address this. And I think it's a good thing. I don't know how everyone else would feel about it, but I think that they should be given an option such as that, and if we could address that
I think it's a great idea, Senator, because it is an opportunity, everybody's together to discuss that subject, but I'm not sure that would be under the post standards and training intent, but it is definitely an opportunity, maybe after post meets, have a secondary meeting to talk about retirement. I mean, since we got everybody in the same room. Absolutely.
So do you feel that we should perhaps restructure the post, and with this restructure, perhaps giving them adjudication authority?
I believe that was what we were asking for the last time we came before you, to allow the post commission a little more independence to develop the rules and make decisions for our law enforcement and fire personnel.
And perhaps this could be, when we address adjudication authority, we can also address the restructuring to give you more flexibility to address the issues in your agencies?
Great idea, Senator. We support you.
Okay, great. Thank you for that. The bill should be forthcoming next week. I wanted to talk a little bit about the fees, though, because we did have numerous discussions last term about increasing the fees. Some of the challenges that we were faced, which is why we didn't move forward with the bill, was the ambiguity in cost. And so if there is a fee increase, I think there needs to be, we must have a comparative study so that the cost isn't so, the description of the cost or the fee that you're paying is not so ambiguous. Some of the fees went from $32 to $395. So that's an enormous jump when you did it in comparison with the national average or how the numbers were pulled. So yes, and then also the personnel costs and salaries and benefits alone, it's $29.8 million. And the budget request is $32.75 million, is that correct, or around there? So I was wondering if there's a way that, are there other, or perhaps have you seen, or do you believe in that in other municipalities that they are able to decrease personnel costs by privatizing certain functions of the fire department? Do you believe that's a viable option for Guam?
So the answer would be, obviously, it would be if there's any way that we can be more efficient, cost effective, if that would include potentially privatizing some services, yes, the answer would be yes.
Okay. Can you look into that, Chief? If there are some
Yes, Senator.
areas we can. Okay, that's all. That's all I have. I want to say thank you very much to all the firemen and to you also, the leadership, for the tremendous amount of work that you do. I mean, people make jokes about, you guys are either cooking or such and such, but really, if there's any incidents or accidents, even at the family home, they drive to the fire station. Like, that is, you're the urgent care for our island. And
That's
so
correct.
Thank you for being there all the time, 24/7, and always receiving us and treating us. We really appreciate your service.
Thank you very much, Senator. I appreciate those comments.
Thank you, Madam Vice. Does any of my colleagues have any questions before I ask the questions and wrap it up? Yes, Senator Lee.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And thanks again, Chiefs, for hanging in there with us. Just a few more questions. In the back, the last page of your budget submission, there was a chart that kind of details overtime for the past typhoons. And one of the things that kind of jumped out at me was FY 2014 Typhoon Francisco overtime. So I just wanted to give you an opportunity to give us an update on paying overtime for this, these hours worked for typhoons.
Right, and so thank you for the question, Senator. So we've been actually actively speaking with BBMR to see if we can identify any funding to be able to satisfy that obligation.
Yeah, because I'm looking at like $65,000 since 2014, and then we have 2015 Typhoon Bavi and Typhoon Dolphin, and that's upwards of $130,000. So it's just concerning me that we have all of these things still on the books, and we really need to address that for time that was already served.
So if I may, we just recently clarified where that overtime's supposed to be paid out. The assumption in the past was, and how it's been done before, is that was paid out by FEMA through Office of Civil Defense. But now it's on a reimbursable type of mechanism. So we got to pay it out first and then apply for reimbursement through them. So now that that's all been clarified, as the fire chief has stated, BBMR is tracking, and we're trying to find creative ways to do it. So currently, we pay these individuals as they retired out. We got to make them whole and pay them with whatever funding's available, whether it be savings from their remaining salary that was appropriated, or other avenues.
Excellent. Okay, thank you very much for that update. In terms of a question that Senator Pito Cherlahi had asked earlier about the post, I wanted to just give you an opportunity to give the committee an update on what you think GFD's performance in the post would be. So, he's very concerned that there might be some GFD personnel that maybe wouldn't cut the muster in terms of what the post requirement is. Are you seeing a lion's share of GFD personnel unable to meet post requirements?
So actually, Senator, to answer your question, for the Guam Fire Department specifically, when Post implemented the requirement for physical fitness, Guam Fire Department was actually at a 92% success rate.
Could you repeat that?
92% success rate. And with the amendment making the firefighter, the FPAT testing being the testing for the Guam Fire Department, we've adopted to ensure success of our firefighters with regards to this testing, we've adopted a crawl, walk, run methodology to make sure that, one, our firefighters understand what it is that's going to be the expectation for this testing. Then we slowly start introducing the test to them from just wearing PT gear, run them through the test, and then slowly add on the additional components of the test, which is the firefighter ensemble, to include the breathing apparatus. And then we start doing the testing from that, or baseline testing from that point. And with the expectation that when it comes time to, no kidding, do that testing for submission to the post, that we've prepared, we've trained, prepared, and got them ready to be successful when it comes time for testing.
Does that include a 1047 drill, or is this a completely different?
Yes, Senator, that's exactly what it is, a 1047,
okay.
Yes.
Okay, great. And 92 is excellent. We just want to, and that's the initial.
That's correct. That was from the initial rollout of.
And so we can work with those additional 8% of folks to get them on board and tracking.
Absolutely. That is the intent. So it's going to be a very holistic approach too, as well. It's not just going to be concentrating on the fitness testing. It's inclusive of a wellness program,
Great.
Proper eating, things of that nature, because obviously there's a huge benefit to having the full complement of a program such as that.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Chief.
Thank you.
My last question, in terms of federal grants, could you give us a brief update on federal grants? And can you just inform us if you have somebody specific on the GFD team dedicated to researching and writing grants? In addition to that, we know that once we are awarded these grants, a lot of reporting is required. So I just want to make sure that we are on track with the current grant funding that we're receiving. We're not going to return any of that money back, and that we also have somebody looking towards the future and researching and making sure that we are getting every single opportunity available to us in federal grant funding.
Right, and that responsibility resides with firefighter Kevin Riley. He does a really good job as far as making sure he's tracking the federal requirements, doing all the required reporting, and he's done a very good job at that. Of course, he's recruited several of the other of our personnel to assist him in that, because it is a pretty Herculean effort that he's putting
Right.
forth.
Okay, no pressure, Kevin, but you better be doing your job. Okay.
Right.
Thank you very much, Chief. I really appreciate
Senator.
all of your
Appreciate it.
participation in this hearing, and we look forward to continuing supporting GFD.
Thank you very much. Really appreciate that.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Kelly?
Situus Masi, for allowing me to have one follow-up question. But before I get to that, I wanted to mirror Senator Taidugui's statement, just recognizing and appreciating your can-do attitude. There's probably not a single agency that doesn't have some budgetary and equipment constraints and the desire and need for more, but it was really important to hear that you are doing what you can to meet the needs of the community. In spite of those challenges, you are working hard to develop the partnerships or find these additional funding sources. I think in the way that modern government works in today's world, that those are important attributes, and that's basically the lay of the land, that needs to be done by all agencies. So I just think it's so important to really hear that that is being done. I just wanted to follow up on the forestry firefighting gear. So what is the estimated number, would you say, of gear that you would need? I mean, are you thinking of one per firefighter, or is there a certain number that you have in mind? I just wanted to get a little bit of a cost understanding. If they're at 500 each, how many uniforms are we talking about?
So ideally, Senator, it would be more appropriate to be able to equip each firefighter. And the reason why I say that is because even if the concentration of our wildland fires happen in the southern region, there is always that possibility that those firefighters that are stationed up in the central and the north get reassigned down there, and they respond out to a particular wildland fire, and they're not issued the equipment just by virtue of their geographic assignment. So obviously, if we can get that type of gear in every one of our firefighters' hands to complement the additional PPEs that are required, then that would be the ultimate goal for us, yes. But we have in the past done that request, and I believe it was, I can't even remember the amount that we were requesting for. So it would be kind of that thought process being where the southern areas experience those types of scenarios more often, to put that equipment down in that region. But again, if we have a firefighter from the north get reassigned down to the south, given some of the challenges in our staffing, we would want to make sure that they're properly equipped and are safe as well in performance of their duties.
And the way that you're outlining it, it makes sense that the southern would perhaps be the priority area. And if you could just remind me, in total, how many firefighters do you have?
It's 250.
Okay, so at least it's easy math, 500 times that.
You're better at it than I am, Senator. Thank you.
Does any other colleague have any questions? I guess not. Let me just wrap that one up. I only have two questions, really two. One, does the Guam Fire Department meet the national standards of the number of firemen, firefighters, or whatever service you provide based on population? Either yes or no. And if it's yes, then that's good. If it's no, how much are you short?
So the correct answer would be no.
Okay.
And at present, if we wanted to meet that optimal number, it would require, we would need an additional, I believe it's 88 is the number that we're looking for.
So following that same question, there are 107 unfunded vacancies, right, in the department? You've only asked for 10. So in other words, if we were to find a way to provide you funding to get to that number, the response time and all these factors and burnout issues with firemen would slowly fade away. Am I correct? Okay. So then I'll get with your oversight. We'll talk about that. We'll look at what the numbers may be. And it won't be a surprise to my colleagues that you're asking for additional funding to fill some of the vacancies. Because as you brought up earlier, people retire, by the time they retire, before the firemen come out of the class, gets into the door, you're ready going downhill. And we got to get you where you're, before they retire, you got at least 2 people in there, and 5 are going. At least you're in better shape. Okay? My last one is, everybody's asking, I don't know where they got their questions, but I guess we're all thinking the same way because most of my questions are already answered. So I'm just going to make it real short. And since there's no one else here to testify, the budget, this being none, this committee will conclude the budget hearing for the Guam Fire Department for 2020. Committee will continue to receive testimony, and please address your testimony to the Committee on General Government Operation, Appropriation, Housing, and submit it via email, Senator Joe S. @gmail.com. Sijus Masi for your attendance, participation in today's hearing, and for those at home, thank you for watching. The budget hearing is now adjourned as of 11:40. Thank you, Chiefs.
Senators, thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of your day and your weekend.
Thank you.